All right. This next excuse me, this next lecture, ah, this next lecture is on process technology and capacity. So this is looking at your options from a business standpoint, which is very important to understand the business implications of any type of process, whether it's manufacturing food or manufacturing pencils or automobiles or anything else. There are ways to look at things that are standard and valuable in the financial world. So we'll look at process planning, process analysis. How is your process and how efficient, effective it is? Process innovation, making things different than they used to be. There's incremental, slow innovation, things evolve gradually, and there's breakthrough innovations when you introduce a new technique, a new technology, a new step in the process that really revolutionizes your manufacturing or service or whatever you're providing. And then technology decisions. How do you use information about what you know, what you learn, what your process is to make good business decisions? And then there are capacity decisions. You know, you can always say more is better, but it depends. A lot of companies over the years grew themselves right into the ground or made decisions of increasing capacity in ways, thinking that bigger is better, and didn't do the proper business math to determine whether they were truly in a uh, growth opportunity mode or not. So you have to look at what is your capacity, what should I do, if anything, to change my capacity for making or providing my products and services. So, first, process planning. A process is a group of related tasks with specific inputs and outputs. So, everything has a process. I'm going to write a paper. Well, I first have some inputs, and the old fashioned way was a piece of paper and a pencil. I needed that to get started. Maybe an eraser would be handy too. Now we have a laptop perhaps and a word processing program. That would be considered your inputs. The output is the finished product, and you have to go through a series of steps of determining the topic, finding some information to use in your paper, creating an outline perhaps, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a process for everything. If I'm making a bag of salad, I need to get all of the inputs together, the inputs being the plastic film that's going to make the bag. I need the lettuce and the carrots and the cabbage and any other ingredients that might be going into that lettuce. Those are all inputs. Um, and depending on how you're looking at this, there are other inputs, your sanitizer, the equipment used to clean your lines, the water and the flume, the chlorine in the flume water to keep the lettuce clean. All of those things are part of your process inputs, even if they're not making it all the way to the consumer. Process design. Well, now we're looking at how to organize this into a procedure, a protocol, a recipe, just different words for a process where you have a set of steps. How long is the step going to be? Which inputs and outputs are expected in each of the steps? How do you make sure that things are going properly in each of the steps, etc.? So you're coordinating different pieces of the process, um, different people, possibly even different organizations. So Maybe my process is payroll, and I need to make sure that the bank accounts are all on board and in line with cutting those checks for payroll. Maybe I'm providing information to an outside company, and I don't do my own payroll in-house in our business. We put all the payroll data together, and then we send payroll data to an outside contract company that is actually going to process it and cut the checks and send them to our employees, take that task away from us. So again, there are lots of things that you're coordinating. Process planning, we're looking at converting that design into a series of workable instructions. So the process design you could think of as the big picture, organizing, how is it going to work? How is everything going to fit together? And then you've got to get down to the nitty gritty, the actual day-to-day steps that employees must take in order for this to work, to finish the actual process. So you design the process, big picture idea, planning the process, you're actually taking the big picture, the concepts, the organization of your ideas and putting it into the detailed steps that employees have to work with. Process strategy and overall approach for physically producing goods and services. And there are different strategies that you might have. One company might be into selling high volume, low cost. So you're making a bunch of really inexpensive pencils that you're going to put companies' names on them. You're not really worried about making the best pencils for comfort and writing and the best quality lead. You're just worried about getting pencils made as quickly and cheaply as possible so you can put the company logo on there and use it as advertising or give them away as gifts at the fair, whatever. That's one strategy. You're going to sell a whole bunch of really cheap things. Another strategy might be selling very few things that are much higher quality. Heck, there are companies that'll sell you a pen for 25 cents and companies that'll sell you a pen for $250. And I'm not talking about gold-plated pens. I'm just talking about something that is high-tech type of writing device, something that you would expect if you keep good care of it, you could have it for a lifetime. So again, you're after different markets with these different strategies, and different strategies function better with different types of products. I don't use the same strategies if I'm a realtor as I would be if I'm making bagged salads. They're different types of businesses with different types of approaches. So when we're looking at process strategy, there's a mix of capital or equipment, automation, money that you have to invest. How much money am I going to throw at making this efficient for high volume, high automation? It can go with fewer employees. That costs money. Or labor resources. Well, that costs money too, but now you're talking about people. And so you're balancing equipment and automation and computerization and human labor, and you're balancing those things to create what you consider to be the sweet spot of capital intensity, how much money you're throwing into the process to try and make it as profitable as possible. Now, there are some who think that, being really stingy with every penny is the best way to go. You make money by not spending it. Well, in some cases that can be true, and in some strategies that works. You've got to be frugal. You've got to be very careful. And spending money is not a way to make money if you spend it foolishly. So there is kind of the stingy approach. There's also the throw everything at it, the best, highest end, most automated, most uh, high quality equipment you can get with the highest capacity. Well, that can work or it can bankrupt you. It can work if you have the customer base to sell them a lot of stuff or very high end stuff. So, if I'm, go back to the pencils. If I'm going to have an extremely highly automated pencil manufacturing facility, that's going to be expensive to get started, very expensive to set up. So if I've got a very small customer base, I won't make my money back on those machines. They're going to be working way too little. I can run them an hour a day and I make all that I need to meet my customers' needs. And that's not good enough. If you're running an expensive machine an hour a day, maybe you would have been better off running a less expensive, slower machine that you can keep busy for 8 to 16 hours, 1 or 2 shifts of production. Again, capital intensity is really important. Process flexibility, the ease with which resources can be adjusted in response to changes in demand, technology, products or services, and resource availability. So how flexible is your process? So for example, if I'm making automobiles, it's a lot of work to change from making a Thunderbird to a Mustang. There's a lot of differences. And so when I've got a line set up to make a product, sometimes that line is set up to make that product. And it's not really that flexible. It takes a lot of work redoing the whole line, new programming into the welding machines and all kinds of detail. It's not easy. Is that a big deal? Not if you're expecting to have that line running all year long, making the same stuff, or maybe multiple years, making the same kind of thing with minor adjustments. Then you're not too worried about flexibility. But maybe you get another situation where you're making bottles of spices and one customer wants a 1 ounce bottle, another customer wants a 1.5 ounce bottle, another customer wants an 8 ounce bottle. How easy is it to change to these different size bottles? Will your system handle it? Some systems, yes, some systems, no. And so you have to look at that. Am I flexible enough for my customer needs and for the changing products that I'm planning to make? Sometimes you need a lot of flexibility. Sometimes you just need a little bit or none at all, really. Vertical integration. This is a very important concept, and I think one where companies often make mistakes. The extent to which the firm or the company will produce inputs and control outputs of each stage of the production process. Okay, well, let's think about this. I could be something like Driscoll's. And what does Driscoll's do? They basically cool, package, and ship strawberries. Do they grow strawberries? No. They actually have other companies. They have companies provide them with the strawberries to cool, package, and ship. Or package, cool, and ship, in that order. They could make a decision to own the plant that makes the clamshells, the plastic molds, and make their own clamshells. They could make their own cardboard flats. They could make their own pallets. They could make their own labels that go on the clamshells and the boxes. They could manufacture their own cooling equipment if they wanted to. In the situation with Driscoll's, I can tell you that their concept is they do one thing. They cool and ship strawberries, and they do it really well. and they make contracts with other companies to provide all of the inputs, the strawberries, the clamshells, the labels, the boxes, etc. They do their cooling, but they also buy all of their cooling equipment from other companies. So they're not extremely vertically integrated, but they own a major share of a lot of these inputs. They own strawberry growers. They do own them. They're not operating under the name Driscoll's. The ones owned are, I think all of them are owned under the Ryder affiliates name. Doesn't matter. Companies often have to make a big decision. Am I going to, as a company, do this added step, or am I going to buy it from somebody else or spin it off as another company and I can still own it, but it's a separate company? Another example, Fresh Express. They actually were a spin-off company from Bruce Church Incorporated. Bruce Church grew lettuce and they spun off a lot of companies. They spun off a BC Seeds, a seed company that focused on creating and producing lettuce varieties and the seed for the growers. They spun off a company called Transfresh, which transports controlled atmosphere products. Transfresh is huge in the international world for shipping fruits and vegetables all over the world in ships and planes. They spun off Fresh Express. Fresh Express, the packaged salad company, is a product from Bruce Church. And on. There were many different companies that Bruce Church said, we grow lettuce. We don't want to get sidetracked doing something, focusing on something that isn't our core business, our mission, the mission statement of the company. We're a lettuce producer. And yeah, we could own the boxes. They spun off a box company at one point, I'm pretty sure. I know they did things. I don't know if it was a spinoff, but they did a lot in plastic pallet-sized bins, pallet bags, and even cardboard boxes. They did all kinds of work in that area, as well as these other things that I was talking about, Transfresh, Fresh Express, etc. They spun it off. They did not become vertically integrated. They became partners. These other operations had their own employees, their own management, their own leadership. Yeah, Fresh Express or Bruce Church actually owned a lot of the shares in these companies, but it wasn't under the same corporate umbrella as Bruce Church. There are lots of decisions to be made in this. There's insurance issues, liability issues. There's workers' compensation insurance, which is different than liability insurance. And workers' compensation, as a farming operation, workers' compensation is very high in ag. And it's lower in manufacturing. It's lower in other areas. And so spinning them off helped make a good decision for savings in workers' compensation. So there's a lot of things that go into that. An example of a company that did vertically integrate a whole bunch, Microsoft. And Microsoft, they're making all kinds of things, Microsoft keyboards and mice and Windows itself, the software that goes on to Windows like Microsoft Office, and business strategy software and hardware. And there's tons of stuff. There's Microsoft programming teams, there's Microsoft training, on and on and on, to the point where Microsoft has been threatened with controlling too much and efforts by the government to break them up. They're too big, they're too integrated, they own too much. Uh, didn't actually happen in the way some people wanted because Microsoft did have some significant competition with Apple, Macintosh, uh, the old Steve Jobs and company. And but that's an example of vertical integration. And customer involvement. What role does the customer play in the production process? In a lot of companies, you meet with a customer, you talk about their needs, their specs that they are hoping to get, the quantity that they're hoping to get, delivery dates, et cetera. You make sure that you're giving them what they want when they want it in the quantity they're asking for and a negotiated price. In other situations, you just make it. You're not really that worried. You might just take feedback occasionally from your customers, but let's say you're making office supplies, you're making binders, you're making binder paper, you're making pencils and pens, you're Bic making pens. Are you going around to all of the office supply places and getting them involved in manufacturing? No. You know what you're doing, you know your market, you've got a huge market, you make it to some standard specifications and you distribute um, to your office depots and other outlets. You're not really worried about customer involvement, not at a large level. Yeah, you're paying attention to pricing, you're paying attention to what things are selling, what are hot, what are not. You're doing random surveys here and there to see what customers are liking, what the trends are. If there are customer complaints about things not working, poor quality. So yeah, there's always, touching bases with your customer, but that's different. Keeping in contact, keeping your customer happy, that always happens. Involving customers in the process strategy, that depends on your situation. Maybe I'm manufacturing stainless steel food processing equipment. Oh, hell yeah, the customer's totally involved from day one, before day one. In the idea and planning stage, the customer is super involved because I'm making a $250,000, a $2 million line for that customer if I win their business. I need to know everything about it, and they need to know everything about what I'm planning to do to manufacture that line, that production line for them. All right, let's take a quick break.